Hey guys, welcome back to the video. Today I'm going to show you how I turned this 99 up horseshoe intake made for fuel injection, obviously, into this so it can accept a 4-barrel square flanged carb. And I'll do it all in under 30 minutes and at least video time. Obviously, video's time lapsed. This will take a lot longer than 30 minutes if you're going to do it. The reasons I wanted to do it was on Power Nation, they rebuilt a Jeep 4.0, tried to hit 242 horsepower, and they beat that. And they did the same thing, a little bit different because I don't know how to weld. So they went about it a little bit different way. But they used the 850 carb I'm using, and it was on an engine dyno. So, I don't know how real world that is. There's no, I don't know, it's not under load or anything like that. There's also debates online back and forth. There was an article written about how they actually lost power on their when they did a chassis dyno with it. They didn't show the dyno, but I think they lost 5 horsepower. They didn't show the dyno, which kind of annoys me because maybe they gained torque down low, this, that, and the other, and you can only do so much with a chassis dyno anyhow. But nonetheless, and it's been debated back and forth whether this is made for wet flow or not, and blah, 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 and all that jazz. So this is going to be the first part of multiple vids. Here's the plan. I'm going to dyno my Jeep with the Clifford that's on her now with the Holley 390. I already have those dyno sheets, but I'm going to dyno it again because I changed the gearing to 410. So last time it was in 3rd gear is where we topped off at. He didn't feel safe going over 100 miles an hour stationary in my Jeep. I don't know why, but anyways. So he was like, bro, I'm not going to 4th gear. And I was like, all right, fair enough. So I changed the gearing to 410, which I want to do anyhow. So we're going to dyno that. And then we're going to slap on this intake as you see it sit here and slap that on with the Holley 390, tune that all up. And if I get it running and tuning and this, that, and the other, which I think I will, then we're going to dyno that. And then I'm going to kind of visually flow it, which doesn't make any sense now, but you'll see in the future videos what I mean. And I'm going to do my mods to it, and then I'm going to slap it back on, and we'll dyno it again. So we will have 3 dynos, Clifford and Holley, this one as it sits in Holley, and then after my mods and Holley, because I have some ideas. And like I said, I'll go over it in future videos. So let's get back into this. So to do this, you obviously need a 99 up 4.0 intake, also known as a horseshoe. Countersink bits, 1/4-20 drill tap and bit, 1/4-20 threaded rod or long bolt, 5/16 18 drill bit and tap, rolled adhesive sandpaper. I used 320 grit for everything. A router. I had a router. I have an 18-volt Makita. I use it for work, so that's what I had. That's what I'm comfortable with. I have a router bit for aluminum. It's carbide, quarter inch shank, 2.5 inches long, a 0 flute upcut. I bought that on Amazon. Cutting oil, hole saw. I did not use a hole saw, but I'll explain to you down the road where I should have because I'm a dumbass and I make my life difficult. So JB Weld, Loctite 680 green, relax fits, carb spacer, obviously, carbon parts cleaner, 9/16 aluminum rod, 12-inch, 3-inch mini grinder with diamond cutting wheel. And you'll see that guy, it's a 12-volt Milwaukee. Again, I have it for work. But if you don't have one and you do a lot of projects, you should get one. It's a tiny grinder, has a 3-inch blade. I know it sounds useless and people laugh at it. But honestly, for tight spaces, it's awesome. And also it has reversible rotation. So if you're in a really tight spot, it's obviously way smaller. You'll see it way smaller than a normal grinder. And if you're in a tight spot and you can't turn it around or reverse the rotation, you just click the button over and it goes the other way. So it's not throwing, whatever. You can use your brain and figure that out. But it's pretty cool to have. I love that little tool. So socket set and box wrenches, clamps, and then miscellaneous stuff, 4x4, safety glasses, pencils, all that jazz, try not to lose an eye. I use my grinder to cut off that port. And then I get it back out and I start leveling out all the high spots. And you'll see here that I'm more like whittling it away, so to speak. What I'll do is I'll grind it down, but then I'll actually go underneath it and then go underneath the material by about an 1/8 inch, and then for good ways, and then cut straight down or slightly angle it up, and it kind of whittles the aluminum way. That was the fastest way to do it. You don't want to get too crazy here. We'll use our aluminum plate. Oh yeah, I forgot about that on the list of things you need. You need an aluminum plate, obviously. Plate, mine was 6.5 inch by 5 7/8, and 1/4 inch thick. And that's what we will use for a base plate for your spacers, your carb spacers. I had the carb spacer gasket, and I kept checking the sizes. I don't know why. This is the first time I did it. I just wanted to get a rough cut right here. But honestly, you don't have to do it this way. I did a rough cut. You don't need to. Just get this whole entire process. But you know, hindsight's 20/20. So, and I'll explain why. If you leave that the way it is and you just get to flattening it, it actually, you're going to end up cutting it out anyhow. So, but whatever. This is the first time I've ever done something like this. So that's the way I did it. So I cut it and then knocked them out. So now we have basically a rough hole for our square carburetor flange. I didn't oversize it. I just wanted a larger hole. And then this is where I used the aluminum plate, what we'll use as a base plate. Use the adhesive 320 sandpaper and started whittling it, or basically sanding it down. I found the high spots, hit them up a little bit. You don't want to go too crazy with this because otherwise you don't want a big gouge there, so just be careful with it. I'm really used to using that little grinder. And so, but you know, just if you want to play it safe, grind less and sand more, or vice versa. So here I wanted it as level as possible. More so because your body will naturally level things out. And so if you start off level, you'll probably sand level and just makes for a better product. And use water. So sand with water. So, you know, kind of gets rid of all the aluminum dust. And here I used a little, you don't need this tool. It worked okay, but a little 12-volt oscillating tool or multi-tool. This bought it in the same package as my little baby grinder. And it worked okay. I put Velcro on there, on the actual plate, and it did good when I had a thin piece of Velcro. You know, the actual oscillating action would actually get down to the vibrating and oscillating action would actually transfer down to the actual aluminum. But then the Velcro started to, I don't know if it got like dirty or what, it just wouldn't stick as well. So then I tried another Velcro and it was too thick, and it gripped better, but it was too thick and I would lose the oscillating and vibration action of the actual multi-tool. So it worked good, but it wasn't really needed. And in the end, I ended up abandoning all of that anyhow. But I did keep the Velcro on there, and I fastened a little. I got more Velcro with adhesive, and basically made a handle out of it, and kept at it. I did this. I sanded maybe again 320 grit. I swapped out it for, I don't know, maybe 4 times, and I don't know, maybe like 2 hours of sanding, 1.5 to 2 hours of sanding. Sorry, I didn't really keep track of time, but it wasn't really all that bad until we got to it being flat. And there's a light texture on those intakes, so you'll know when you're flat or not. All right, here, I'm going to share this just because if you're thinking about doing this with the tabletop mill and drill press, it worked okay. I didn't like it. I use a router for woodwork in my job, so, and I don't even use a router all that often, but enough to be comfortable with it and know what to do and what not to do. I maybe use a router, I don't know, once every 3 months, cut out hinges of doors and router out lead line doors for continuous hinges, stuff like that. So anyways, I tried this tabletop mill. I don't know, just wasn't my thing. I didn't really like. All right, so here we have the flange with a square hole, and we're putting up on top. We've already flattened out the actual intake. I'm using a speed square to mark off my holes where I'm going to use the bolts that bolt down to the actual intake. Now, you'll see where I have drawn out the actual spacer using the gasket. So the reason I did that is because I want to know exactly where my holes go to hold down the flange to the intake, because I want those hidden underneath the gasket. And you can see in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a circular hole that I drew. That's where that old port was. So I had to actually offset a screw. But this actually helps us out, because the offset screw, when you go JB weld it or anything else you're going to do with it, it actually, you can only put it on one way. So you won't mess that up, because what you'll see here is I drill one hole and then take that exact drill bit, put it in there to keep it in place, to kind of stake it temporarily, and then drill another hole and then put that drill bit in there to stake it, and then use a third drill bit to drill the other two. And then I drill them out larger. I don't remember the drill bit size. It just has to be larger than the 1/4-20 screw, because we want those screws to go through that flange after our countersinking bits into the intake. So you want larger than 1/4-20 drilled out holes on the flange, and then drill and tap the intake for the 1/4-20 that is corresponding to those holes. All right, and there I am with the countersink bit, hitting them up. My countersink bit was old and used. It was pretty nasty, but whatever, we don't really care. At least I don't. We just need to get the 1/4-20s. They were little stubby ones. They were, oh man, I mean, that flange is a 1/4 inch thick aluminum, and that's probably about how thick the head was. So I'd say maybe like, I don't know, a 1/4 inch of thread. So altogether, a 1/2 inch. So we get that done. So now the intake is drilled and tapped 1/4-20. The flange is drilled larger than 1/4-20 and countersunk, hit up with a countersunk bit to countersink those 1/4-20 screws. And then again, I could have just left a hole and then routed this out. Okay, so here is where I said you could just use a hole saw and not be a dumbass like me. So I ended up using my router to basically try to make the square hole the same on the flange, the exact same size square hole as the intake, obviously, and make them up. So I could have just gotten a hole in the flange and then routed it out from there, but I didn't think this far ahead, never done this before. The router, as you can see, is actually super smooth and fast. I mean, you don't want to start eating up too much material, but you get the hang of it, it actually goes pretty quick. And obviously, I mean, it makes it look like all one piece of metal. It's pretty cool. I've never routed aluminum before. But if I had to do it again, this is the way I would do it. Hands down. I wouldn't mess with that tabletop mill thing, whatever the hell it is. I would just router the whole entire thing. But again, I'm used to routers because that's what I use for work. So there you go. So here I am test fitting it. There's the actual spacer, the actual carb spacer. And I keep going. And I tried to describe it, but I don't know. It was hard for me to see. so I just kept using pencil and pencil, and that's what I'm used to. And again, some of this I do for a living, so if you're used to scribing, working with metal and scribing the actual metal, fine, go for it. If you're used to using a pencil, use a pencil. Eventually the pencil will wear away, but nonetheless, do whatever you're comfortable with, because, I don't know, that's how I feel. There is no right, wrong way to do it, as long as you end up with the same product. So here, let me stop myself here. Here you'll see where I had used my mini grinder to cut out that first hole for the flange on the actual intake. You can see that nasty edge. That's because that didn't get routed. That's why it's all janky and just jagged, because I was a little bit too large when I cut it. So again, I would have waited for I would have just waited and routed it out all at once, because then I wouldn't have that. It's not the end of the world. I mean, who cares? It's covered. Obviously, you can see the flat on it, but nonetheless, there you go. So here I got my 9/16 aluminum rod. It's obviously too big. It will not fit in the injector size, or the injector holes. And the injector holes, they were like 13.5 millimeter. I don't know what they were, inches. And they weren't exact either. Either I wasn't exact with my calipers. But injectors use an O-ring, and so they don't have to be, at least as far as I know, they don't have to be perfect in there. I've never had a fuel injected Jeep, so they don't have to be perfect in there, so they don't really care about the machining being exact, this, that, and the other. But nonetheless, we're going to turn down those rods, or I am, and that rod, and then cut it into pieces and fill them up. So that's 0.518. There we go. So we got a little ways to go. So here I took that aluminum rod, plopped it into a vise, drilled into it, tapped it. I used a 1/4-20, had a big long bolt. I obviously didn't have my little grinder. I think I left it at work. And so there you go, stress it out. And then what I do is throw that bolt in there, or that threaded rod now. Chuck it into the drill, throw the drill into the vise, and now I'm making a little mini lathe. And I use Velcro, looped Velcro, so like what you use for keeping low volt wire together, bundles together and stuff like that. That's the Velcro I use, which actually worked out pretty good, because that drill has 2 speeds, one and 2, and obviously has a variable speed trigger. So, I mean, you can get almost any speed you want. I didn't really notice a difference with the sanding, with the water and the 320 grit. I didn't notice whether I go fast or slow, if it made any difference, to be real honest with you. You just got to keep it wet. I think I ended up just keeping it going at a good steady, not full speed, but pretty close to it. And you'll feel it heat up you'll know when you need more water. So there, it was getting a little wonky because, as you saw, I was not exactly center for center on that aluminum rod. So I got a box wrench and a 4x4 and clamped it all together to keep it all steady. And then got back to sanding. And this took me a while, checking and checking. But you just got to be mindless. I'm very good at being mindless and throwing on music and just riding it out, man. This probably took just as long, if not longer, than actually sanding the top of the intake, which I would have never thought. I would have thought that would have been the long part, and this would have been the faster part, but this took forever. But whatever, the product came out pretty good, and like I said, I didn't use any machining, so this is kind of cool. I didn't get this idea with the box wrench from anywhere. I don't know. I got tired of it wiggling on me and just thought it out, and there you go. All right, so here I kept it spinning, Got it down to size, and I used my baby grinder to cut sections out of it. I think I did 3/4 of an inch. Now, what I should have done, in hindsight's 2020, when I put all those plugs in there, they had all a rough end, which is, you can see me kind of grind off the rough edges. So if I had half a brain, and hindsight being 2020, I had to do this again. Before I cut on the ends, I would have actually shaped them somehow, whether rounded them off or something like that. And then marked them 3/4 of an inch and cut it. And then shaped that one again, rounded it off, and then marked it 3/4 of an inch and cut it. So I'm going with this because right now on my intake, I basically just have a raw cut, and I mean it's okay. It just has like little center nipples, so to speak, and like circular design around it because it's from a circular cut. But you know, I don't know. I could have done this a different way, but I didn't think about it until afterwards. And it is what it is. So it's me cleaning it with a bore brush. I don't know, I just used, I think it was a 308 chamber cleaner, brass cleaner, brass brush. Just chucked it in the drill and cleaned it out. So cleaning up the rough edges, making sure they all fit. All right, so we have everything kind of dry fit here. And we are cleaning everything off really well. We're ready to start gluing stuff together, putting stuff together. So use purge cleaner, a lot of shop rags, shop paper towels. Make sure all that cutting oil and everything is out of there. All right, so everything's clean. Now it's time to start gluing stuff together. So break out that JB weld. Mix up more JB weld than you think you need. There's nothing worse than running out of that. I Bondo a lot for work, running out of Bondo, and then you gotta wait for it to dry, and it ain't gonna work in this application. Just mix up. I don't care if you use all those tubes. I smear it around, and I make sure to get around all the screws, the screw holes, and all the way around, and then also around that vac port. And then I screw it down with the 1/4-20 screws, and you see I'm kind of working it around. I don't tighten one down, then go and tighten the other one down. I loosely put them all in, then work them backwards, kind of like when you do a cylinder head or putting on a tire, a wheel, intakes, exhaust, all that kind of jazz. Because I wanted it to have even pressure all the way around as it gets installed. So here's where we break out the Loctite 680. And that stuff's pretty insane. I'd never used it. My machinist buddy told me about it. Wow, that's gnarly. It's like really gnarly. But it's done good and made life easier. I guess I could have used JB Weld for that, but he kind of advised against it, and I trust his knowledge with this kind of stuff. He's a machinist. He's done way more of this and even building engines and stuff than I have. So here I tried to make sure that the JB Weld is squished all the way around the inside. And it is. Of course, if it isn't at this point, I don't know what you'd do. But here I'm checking another spacer I have, which I won't even end up using. It's interesting though, because this spacer was way bigger than the aluminum one I was using. I don't know why. Whatever. Doesn't really make a difference. I'm not going to use this one. I think this is like a 2-inch spacer. I think I have enough plenum volume in there. I don't need any more plenum. And if I do want to use it, I'll do that down the road. I'll mill out more if I really feel like I need to. Just checking different spacers at this point. So, yep, still got JB Weld in there. And then guess what? Guess what? Yeah, I keep saying it. I could have just waited till the end. But whatever. So here I am, doing out more. And this is where I did my final fitting to the spacer. Once it's all glued together and gonna stick together for one last time, because ain't no getting it off now. And nice and steady moves, and that's pretty much it. We're done. And that's how you turn this into this. And like I said, stick around for the next videos, because I am going to run this. Obviously, I didn't build it just for fun, just for poops and giggles. And so we'll put it to the test against the Clifford, and then when I do the third time, when I take it back off and then visually flow it and do the mods. And for the visual flow, if you like this kind of project, this is kind of the stuff I'm into on my channel, obviously. So yeah, I think you'll like that too. Whether it works or not, I have no idea, but that's the whole point. We're going to put it to the test. All right. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you later.